time for a little Dynasty price check here on Fantasy Focus. I'm Derek Tate alongside Ryan Levy. I even forgot to throw up the graphics, but here we are. We're going to be talking a little bit of upcoming free agents for the 2021 NFL offseason. So, Levy, I'm already jonesing for a little bit of fantasy football. The good thing is with Dynasty leagues, the season really never stops. People are already kind of throwing out trade options to me. I know we got our boy Smitty in our Dynasty league for Fantasy Focus through the Hooters League, but we're already talking Dynasty, but it is interesting when we talk about heading into the NFL free agency, what it really does to the upcoming free agents, because some of these guys are young studs, but do they hold the same value if they leave their current landing spots?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is kind of my favorite time of the year. This is when the hardcore fantasy football people come out of the woodworks and are making trade and all that good stuff. I've seen you in our Dynasty League already talking to people like the day after the Super Bowl, already throwing trade offers out there. I've already told you I am banning you from trading with myself in Dynasty League since you've taken me to the cleaners a couple times in the past. But
I'm sorry about Marlon Mack and Kerryon Johnson in particular, man.
Right.
It was nothing personal.
Draft picks this year, though.
Yeah. No, so we're talking about, but in particular, I know that you have some players that you want to discuss that many people have to make some decision on.
For sure.
In most cases, with a volatile situation, unless someone is trying to just hit the complete panic button, I'm normally not trying to acquire an unknown situation. And we find ourselves with that exact scenario with multiple players. And we want to start kind of running them down. Which guys really stand out to you as their dynasty price changing, fluidly over the next month or two?
Yeah, I want to start at tight end. And before I name this specific player, I do want to note, would you believe me if I told you that Logan Thomas was the number 3 tight end last year in PPR formats?
I probably would. It was a weird year between it was Kelsey, then Waller, and then everybody else.
Right.
So, but Logan Thomas, that's really high. I would not have predicted the Washington football team tight end to be the number 3 fantasy tight end.
Unbelievable, man.
That's
not my guy, but the guy I want to mention here, and it's a guy that, the fantasy community in general has been pretty high on throughout the years, and maybe he's never really realized his full potential yet, but it seemed like with Justin Herbert, he was clicking, and he had a solid season. He finished, I believe, as the number 12 tight end, but Hunter Henry is a free agent. So to me, if they aren't able to get a deal done for Hunter Henry and he goes somewhere else as a dynasty owner, how do you feel about that?
Well, let's put it this way. If there's a situation that I would like to see him back in, it would be with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. If anything, if the Chargers retain him, I think he holds equal value, if not a little bit more upside, because it finally seems like he's conquered some of those durability demons that he had earlier in his career. And I thought he clicked really well with a young quarterback that hit the ground running in 2020. And you expect with it a full offseason, hopefully with more OTAs, more practice, that Herbert's going to be potentially even better in 2020 and beyond. So, but the problem being, I think it's an interesting one that we lead off with here with Hunter Henry, because if he moves elsewhere, where is his situation really going to be much better than it is in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that, man. That's where I'm going with this. If I'm an owner of Hunter Henry right now in Dynasty specifically, or in a long-term keeper league, whatever your format is, I want him to stay with the Chargers. Justin Herbert is one of the up-and-comers in the league at the quarterback position, obviously, ton of upside there. And I got to believe they're going to do everything they can to keep this guy. And I got to believe he wants to stay there, but I'm sure he also wants to get paid. So hopefully they've got the money to do it. And again, I don't think this guy has still – I don't believe that he's reached his full potential yet. And I think there's a ton of upside with him. I do believe he's got the talent to be a top 5 tight end, assuming he stays healthy and all that, especially with Herbert. So as a dynasty owner, I'm just really hoping he stays there. I don't want to see him go somewhere else.
Yeah, he posted career high in receptions with 60, and you felt like, he probably even left a little bit of meat on the bone. We saw that with a rookie quarterback under center. Granted, I think they have a lot of talented pass catchers. The one thing that you can argue with him going elsewhere than Los Angeles is they've already got 2 target hogs in Keenan Allen and in Austin Eckler, particularly out of the backfield. Right. Now, it'll be interesting to see how that offense changes and evolves for Justin Herbert. Now that Anthony Lynn is gone, they've brought in Brandon Staley as the new head coach. So there's even some other movement within that organization. It's not going to be the exact same scenario that he'd be returning to, but the talent is certainly there. You can make the argument for or against, but I certainly would like to see him in Los Angeles. He's an interesting heading into free agency. Is he somebody that you're trying to acquire, though? I mean, maybe in a tight end premium, because he is a guy that's capable of catching 60, 70 passes at the tight end position, which is not exactly common.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it depends, right? Obviously, this is early. We're recording here on February 24th, and we don't know. A lot can change. A lot can happen. But, you know, there's certain scenarios where I'd love to see him. Like old Bob Tunyon's a free agent too. Maybe Hunter Henry goes on up to Green Bay. I'd love to see that. I mean, come on. That would be awesome. And you know, Green Bay isn't huge on free agents, but they've made some splashes at the tight end position historically. So maybe that's a good landing spot. I'd be excited about that, but ultimately I want him to stay. So just speculating.
I agree with you. I mean, he would be an interesting fit in the little floor system that saw. Is Bobby Tunyon really Bubby? I'm going to start calling him Bubby now. That's just too good of a nickname. But no, I saw a thread. Is Tunyon really a very good tight end, or is he just the product of Aaron Rodgers having an MVP season? I mean,
right.
The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But in particular, when it comes to Hunter Henry, there's a couple places that you can go, oh, that's an interesting spot. I think he'd do great there. And then there's a couple places where I think he just falls into fantasy obscurity and you see his dynasty value tank and he never realizes that full potential. But obviously, if this is the one huge payday he is going to potentially get in the National Football League after his rookie contract, then it's worth monitoring where he is going to land. So, but I mean, I want to bring up a name. And it's funny that we talk about the Green Bay Packers because Aaron Jones is a guy that has now finished, top 5 at the running back position in PPR formats in consecutive seasons now. Many were scared off about A.J. Dillon being drafted in the second round. So his dynasty value really was very hard to measure because you knew he was going to be back with the Packers in 2020. Right. And he came back and he was still the lead dog. A terrible finish to the 2020 season, 2 fumbles in the NFC Championship game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I imagine he's not going to be back with the Packers. So where does his situation vastly improve? I mean, did we already kind of miss the boat on selling high on Aaron Jones? I mean, what's kind of his fantasy value at the current stake? And where are some of his better landing spots? And where are some places that if he goes there, I'm not loving it?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, I'm nervous, right? I mean, the NFL has shifted towards more of a running back by committee and on most teams, honestly. So I don't know that his situation gets much better than it was in Green Bay. So yeah, you probably did miss the boat on selling high on Aaron Jones. At this point, if you're an owner, you're not going to sell him now, right? I mean, there's so much uncertainty. You're kind of hoping and praying that he ends up in an ideal situation. Where is that? I honestly have no idea. I mean, maybe it's like Miami or, a team like that, but I don't think the situation's going to get better than Green Bay. And I'm with you. I don't think he's going to return to that offense.
I don't know what John Lynch thinks of Aaron Jones, but a similar offensive scheme, Shanahan, Matt LaFleur. I particularly think that that would be a great fit for Aaron Jones. I don't think that they really have a lead dog right now. I mean, say what you will about Raheem Mostert. I mean, I love the player, but, do I think Aaron Jones is better? I do. Right. I think that's a great spot for him would be San Francisco if they're willing to drop some money on a running back, though. I don't know.
Be kind of a nightmare, though. The other thing I was going to say was like maybe Pittsburgh because James Conner is a free agent too.
Right.
But, I mean, wouldn't it be a nightmare to see Aaron Jones go to San Fran and then Jeff Wilson's still getting carries and Mostert's still involved and who knows, Tevin Coleman and just.
Well, here's the weird thing, though. You mentioned that most backfields are a running back by committee, and we even still saw Jamal Williams have a role. I mean, we saw A.J. Dillon get a little bit more involved as the season progressed. More so, I saw it more so in the postseason. But, when we talk about Aaron Jones, he's still someone that efficiency-wise can do a lot with 10 to 15 touches a game.
For sure.
So that's why San Francisco kind of jumps out to me. But yeah, Aaron Jones, we talk about missing the boat on selling him high. I sold him for 2 first-round picks in a dynasty league that I'm in because I got hurt with Joe Burrow in a super flex league. He was obviously knocked out for the season. I just didn't think I had what it takes to even make any sort of playoff push. So someone threw 2 firsts at me in a dynasty format, and I cashed out on Aaron Jones. I don't know if that was the right price because he's still a stud, but I mean, I definitely did what I could to go ahead and sell high on him because if he's not a Green Bay Packer, he makes me really uneasy moving forward.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. I think that's 2 first rounders. You cashed out well, sir.
I did what I could. Trying to sell high. I mean, I wish I was this efficient in the stock market or whatever. I don't even play the stocks. I need to, man. I understand it as far as fantasy value goes. But now we talk about a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and there's been some whispers about your boy Chris Godwin, who, we actually, when we did our Fantasy Focus Hooters draft, Chris Godwin, I believe, was the last pick of the first round.
Right.
I mean, he had a breakout season in 2019. Obviously, Jameis Winston throwing the ball all over the yard, 5,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns to go 30 interceptions, his own 30 for 30. That's going to be, it's going to be a great 30 for 30 someday.
Yes.
But Chris Godwin emerged and had a breakout season and looked as if he was primed to potentially, have top 10 fantasy value moving forward. But now it's interesting because if he's a Buccaneer, does it hurt his value a little bit? Because of all the other weapons here with Brady Ball in Tampa Bay.
I mean, we briefly touched on this. I mean, you could make the argument that in this offense, while Brady's there anyway, I mean, 2 years from now, we might be regretting, or I might be regretting saying this, but you could make the argument that the Bucs could go on without Chris Godwin. I'd almost, I hate to say it, but I'd almost rather sign a cheaper Antonio Brown on a 1 or 2 year deal than spend $15 to $20 million a year for Chris Godwin long term. Listen, I love Chris Godwin. I'm a big fan of Chris Godwin. And I see what you're saying, though. You could make the argument from a dynasty perspective that his value might be better somewhere else. There's
no shortage of a team that needs a guy that can flex inside or outside with his skill set, right? Like, I think that if he gets a heavier dose of targets, now granted, it's not going to be at the efficiency that we're accustomed to with Tom Brady because Tom Brady is Tom Brady. But, could Chris Godwin go somewhere and help out a contending team with a quality level quarterback and put up top 10 numbers? I think so, like right off the jump.
Can you imagine him in Green Bay opposite of Devontae Adams? Bringing up Green Bay, I know they're not a big free agency type of team. But
I know you keep bringing up Green Bay, though. It's like I get why, because it's, could Aaron Rodgers be even better with a legit top end number 2 to go with Devontae Adams? I mean, yeah, of course. But, that is somewhere that's interesting. I mean, we talk about, even think like the New York Giants, though, like a team that is devoid of a number 1 right now. Mm-hmm. Would he be peppered with targets? What would that look like, though, with Daniel Jones? I mean, Daniel Jones is very hit or miss, but I mean, I'm not saying I want him to go there. I mean, also the New York Jets. I mean, what if the Jets somehow wiggle away to get Deshaun Watson and pull off a trade, and then you get Chris Godwin to come along with and be Watson's number 1? Now, granted, that's tinfoil, and there's a lot of things have to happen for that to happen. But I'm just saying that when it comes to Chris Godwin, there's a world where I think he can hold the same amount of value, if not even get a bump in pure target volume in other locations.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, as a Bucs fan, selfishly, I want him to stay here. I want us to work out a deal and do everything we can to keep Chris Godwin. But as a dynasty owner of Chris Godwin, I'm perfectly fine with him signing somewhere else, depending where that is. Of course, I'm like, crossing my fingers and hoping it's to a good quarterback. And hey, maybe it's Miami to play opposite of Devontae Parker, and then they trade for Deshaun Watson. I mean, there's so much that can happen at this stage of the offseason. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you there. I just, as a Bucs fan, again, I hope they re-sign him. But as a dynasty owner, I could see the argument either way.
That's the idea, man. We want to see where the chips fall when it comes to Chris Godwin in particular. But I mean, there's some other wide receivers. I mean, you mentioned other wide receivers out on the open market potentially. One in Detroit, or well, formerly of Detroit. We'll see. With a lot of movement there, with Stafford now out of town, it seems like the Lions are embracing a rebuild potentially with Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Gallaudet is obviously a talented player, and he only played 5 games last year, so there's a lot of injury concern there. I don't think he's going to get a monster payday, but I'm certainly intrigued to see where he goes. I mean, at this point, if you're a Dynasty owner, you want him to go sign somewhere else if you're a Kenny Gallaudet owner, right? I mean, we don't even know what the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know, but are you excited about Goff?
Well, I have mixed feelings about Jared Goff because, was he not at least viable, usable for the likes of Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods? It's not like Goff was a fantasy value killer for those guys. Goff is, of course, the trade looks terrible for Jared Goff, right? Because the Los Angeles Rams invested the number 1 overall pick in Goff, and they gave up 2 firsts and a 3rd on top of it to get Matthew Stafford. That was more so to get out of that contract, though. Make no mistake. They just didn't believe Goff had enough to make a difference for them to get over the hump and win a Super Bowl. That's probably what they came to a conclusion as. And his contract was, for a cap strap team, a death sentence, basically. So they overpaid to make sure that they got the money off the books, and they did, and got an upgrade at quarterback in the process. But I don't think Goff, even though he's going to be working with a different offensive mind, he's no longer going to have the genius of Sean McVay to kind of give him the battle plan every single week. Yes, it does make me uneasy if Golladay stays in Detroit, but just, financially for a team that's trying to rebuild, why are you going to hold on to a veteran receiver in Kenny Golladay? So then you start thinking all those places that we talked about Chris Godwin being a good fit. I think the same applies to Kenny Golladay.
This is true. Yeah. I mean, to me, I just don't see Gallaudet as I see Woods and Kupp as like these target monsters. They're not necessarily big, deep threats. So to me, Gallaudet is just a bigger play threat, and I don't know how he fits in with the Jared Goff. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there. It just doesn't seem like a natural fit.
Well, it just depends on it always depends on how they use him. But I mean, I believe that I've seen enough from Kenny Golladay to feel very comfortable that if he's the number 1, even on a bad football team, that he'll still put up probably top 15 PPR numbers. I just think that he's no longer a top 10 threat with the likes of Jared Goff under center on what could be a team that struggles in 2021. But again, we did see that Jared Goff can have 2 receivers be in the top 15. At one point, hell, he had 3 with even Brandon Cooks once upon a time. So Goff is no scrub. He's no bum. I just like to associate his success more with that of Sean McVay and a fantastic scheme built off of play action. We're not going to get that anymore in Detroit. So that's kind of my thoughts on Kenny Golladay. But anybody else that kind of jumps off the screen for you? I mean, there's even some quarterbacks. We haven't even talked about free agent quarterbacks yet.
Yeah, I do want to mention before we move on, though, Will Fuller is a big one for me. I'm really intrigued to see what happens with him. We finally saw him healthy this year. Maybe it was PEDs. I don't know what kept him healthy. Who knows? But I mean, he was an exciting fantasy player. And as a dynasty owner with the Deshaun situation, I guess at this point you're hoping that he goes and signs somewhere else in a good situation, because we don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun. So he's a guy that I've got my eye on real closely. I'm a Will Fuller fan. I was heavily invested in him this year. Obviously, the ending to the season was not what we wanted, but that's a guy I got my eye on this offseason.
See, Will Fuller for me, if you're an owner, shareholder of Will Fuller in Dynasty, then I'm trying to ship him out for anybody that actually is super high on him. Because was his situation ever going to get any better than it was last year with Deshaun Watson, devoid of other significant playmakers on the outside. No offense
Right.
to Brandon Cooks or Randall Cobb, but it was kind of a situation that fell perfectly for Will Fuller's fantasy value. A bad football team that was playing from behind that really couldn't consistently run the football. So Fuller saw an uptick in targets. He finally stayed healthy and put that together for a year. And then, of course, he gets himself suspended. So kind of blows up the entire situation. So as far as Will Fuller goes, I believe he is more so dependent on where he lands. Cash out on him for me. Cash out on what was his healthiest year of his career, his most productive year of his career, and I don't think his situation is going to get any better. I don't see him going to another team and being a bona fide number one, and let's not forget that he still has durability issues.
Right. Now I'm with you there. If you can get someone to buy right now, go ahead and sell him.
Yeah. So, but we're talking about you can hold him too. I mean, because I tell you what, if he goes and lands on someone like the Green Bay Packers, then all of a sudden I'm singing a much different tune. So,
Right.
yeah, Dried Ocean, I didn't even see that comment, and they did show interest during the trade deadline. And Do, you got a point, man. I mean, that deep threat option opposite of Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, who throws probably the best deep ball in the National Football League, right there with Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Yeah, that would be his best landing spot. But we keep talking about Green Bay. Not every free agent can go to Green Bay.
Right. Well, probably none of them do. No, I would not be shocked at all. Hey, by the way, speaking of Patrick Mahomes, Sammy Watkins is a free agent. No, I'm just kidding. No real relevance there. But I'd love to see Fuller go to a place like Kansas City. That would be wild to have the Cheetah and Will Fuller. Oh man, that would just be something else.
I would be shocked if the way that Kansas City, got spanked in the Super Bowl. Granted, I know they had Mitchell Schwartz out, Eric Fisher out. I get it, but I would be surprised if they don't spend a significant amount of assets in the offseason to try to bolster up front. Because Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, their offense was already historically great, in 2020. And I see that still being the case with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce still around and Patrick Mahomes pulling the trigger. But Will Fuller is one of those interesting number twos that could bring a ton of value if he lands with an opposite number one on the other side. And he can stay healthy, though, man. That's the thing that scares me about him long term. I mean, he's had 1 year where he stayed healthy and he got suspended. So I don't know, man. You're higher on Will Fuller than I am.
Yeah, I've just always been a believer, but it was good to see him come to life last year. I had 7 shares of Will Fuller last year, and then it bit me in the ass at the end of the year. But hey, whatever.
There was nothing you could do about that. There was nothing you could do about that, though.
I know, and of course it was after a monster game too. But let's quickly, a couple running backs I want to mention. James Conner is a situation if you're still holding on to James Conner in Dynasty. I don't think you feel great about his future. Obviously, it depends on where he lands, but Pittsburgh, it doesn't look like he's going to re-sign in Pittsburgh, and wherever he ends up, he's probably going to be in a true committee. So that's not ideal.
Yeah, Connor had his chance. I think that this year was really Connor's opportunity to either earn a re-up on a contract or play for a contract on the open market. And to me, he didn't show enough to where you're going to see him be with Aaron Jones also on the market, Leonard Fournette also on the market. There's other running backs that I think are going to be of higher priority than James Conner. So
what do you think about
you're in a hardcore hold situation with James Conner, but Marlon Mack, we talk about durability, man. If Marlon Mack could stay healthy, I think he's still one of the more explosive runners in the National Football League, but now he's coming off of a serious injury. Yeah, man, you talk about a committee. I don't see him again. He's another guy I don't see going anywhere and being the lead guy. He's probably going to be a change of pace slasher that gets somewhere between 5 to 10 touches, 15 if he lands in the right spot and wins the job outright. But yeah, he's a hold. So James Conner and Marlon Mack are both hold guys for me. Same even for Le'Veon Bell, who just was not used in the postseason, and it does it feel like there's some Shady McCoy type vibes behind Lev Bell right now, who went to Kansas City and was basically phased out in favor of Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Put a fork in him, dude. He's done. Or come on.
He wasn't 100% healthy, but I mean, I get what you're saying, man. I as a Lev Bell shareholder, I'm not happy. I'm like, oh boy, I'm stuck. I can't get out of this one.
That's one thing I did good with you was dump Lev Bell on you.
I'm such a believer in Lev Bell, and he hasn't been the same since the jet ski fiasco. So, right. Damn it. Dio, a couple guys joining us live that are pertinent to this episode of Dynasty Price Check. Dio asking about Aaron Jones if he lands in Miami. Quick thoughts.
I think it makes sense because he'd clearly be the best ball carrier in that offense. But a lot of it for me with Miami, I want to see what they do with the quarterback situation. Are they sticking with Tua, or are they going to make a move for Watson? We need to see how the chips fall with Watson, man. Like, that's a big thing this offseason, because if Watson goes down to Miami, I think other people are going to end up there, and it's going to be a totally different looking team. They've got a great defense, and they showed some flashes on offense of being solid, but they obviously have a lot of areas for improvement. But I think I'd be okay with it, even with Tua. But I mean, who knows? It's a Miami running back.
See, I think he would spearhead that backfield, though. You talk about spearheading that committee. I mean, even if they still have Myles Gaskin involved, or Salvin Ahmed, or Matt Breida, I mean, any of the players that are on that roster, and I'd actually have to double check on Matt Breida. I don't know if he's unrestricted.
He's a free agent.
He's a free agent. Yeah, sorry. But when it comes to anybody else on that roster right now, I do think that easily Aaron Jones is the most accomplished and probably the lead back in that backfield, even if he would split snaps with the likes of Myles Gaskin, who I thought Myles Gaskin was great, by the way. Talking about a guy I would like to go get that people aren't high on and don't believe in, Myles Gaskin, I'm fine getting Myles Gaskin shares. That's fine with me.
I'm with you there. And if he does end up there, we saw how valuable these running backs were down the stretch with Miami. They were just pounding the rock. I guess what I'm concerned about is Tua. I just don't know if I saw.
I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned for the running backs. I mean, if anything, that it probably means that you're going to see a higher volume from them. That's more so. That's my thought process. If Tua is under center.
No, I hear you. I just I hope Tua takes a step this year if he is the guy, because I really thought he was going to be lightning in a bottle, and I was proven wrong in that so far.
We'll also have to see. I mean, if they do pull off a trade for Watson, then it's highly unlikely that the Miami Dolphins are going to bring in a running back via the draft. They always could, but I mean, they're probably going to be giving up a ton of high draft capital if they bring in Deshaun Watson. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 firsts and even a player. But when we're talking, we also got Tim Bria who's joining, and he also asked, as a Bills fan, he would like to see J.J. Watt. Not talking a lot of IDP right now, but going to the Buffalo Bills, J.J. Watt, of course, is a name that we want to keep an eye on, and I actually think he would fit very well with the Buffalo Bills. I know that would make Buckey very happy, Tim Bria.
For sure, it would.
So that'll do it for this episode of Dynasty Price Check. If you have not yet done so, go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well as the like button here on the Fantasy Focus channels. We're going to be bringing all kinds of fantasy football content heading into the 2021 NFL fantasy football season. For Ryan Levy, I'm Derek Tate. Until next time, here I am turning on my radio voice, and later, says the Tater.
See you guys.